AS Music Magazine Evaluation, Michael Nunn. Question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? Through deconstructions of music magazines, I found that many conventions were carried through all types of music magazines, such as the terminology used and other conventions could only be applied to music magazines of a certain genre, such as magazines for musicians rather than magazines for music fans. These typically carried an image of a particular instrument on the cover, or a musician famous for their skill in which they play, rather than their fame. I firstly deconstructed the front covers of Enemy and The Fly, amongst others, and found that music magazines are designed for fans of popular music with high production values, tend to feature a particularly current artist on the front cover. For example, an artist that has found recent success with a recently released single or album, or an artist that has been in the news for any reason, such as anniversaries of notable album releases, or the death of important figures in music, or the music industry. Some examples are shown here. I chose to support this convention when designing and creating my front cover by including a professional-looking image of my main model called Ryan Green on my productions. The reason I chose this image for the front cover is because the image was a close-up shot showing his head and shoulders, as in most cover images of single artists and in music magazines. Another convention I found through deconstruction was that most covers display the names of other artists featured in some way. I chose to include this element to the cover as well in order to give the cover and the magazine more credibility, as my magazine was focused on folk music and the popularity of folk music in the last few years or so. It was difficult to include the names of big names in the genre, as folk music has to rival the far more well-known names in the R&B and the pop genres of music. I did, however, choose to include this feature by adding some names of folk artists as a skyline along the top edge. However, after adding the finalised title and main image, I found the only way to keep the skyline on the page was to put it along the bottom edge to create a footer with all the artists' names. A common feature of music magazines in general is a graphic effect that alters the layering of images when creating the cover art. The image of the artist on the cover will be overlaid on the main title to create the effect that the title is hovering on the page and the main image appears to be jumping out of the page. I recreated this effect through the post-production stage of editing the cover page. As you can see from the After deconstructing contents pages of music magazines, I found that the contents pages generally had a messy scrapbook structure to it. Sometimes the contents pages had a slicker look to them by using minimal graphic features and blocks of text on clean white backgrounds. I chose to adopt a more structured style to the contents page by having the list of contents at the bottom of the page headed with an image of one of the more important articles of the magazine, featuring an interview with a band called Tequila Mockingbird. I also used clean lines and square edges on the graphic devices to create a slicker looking contents page with a clear layout. I took inspiration from the contents page of The Fly magazine. Here you can see examples from The Fly that illustrates the minimal style, clear blocks of text and the heavily edited and main image to accompany the contents page, and the comparison to my contents page that shows the same features. Through deconstructions of cover pages from music magazines, I found that colour schemes form an important part of the magazine's identity and house style. For example, Q magazine focuses heavily on its red, white and black colour scheme to the extent that the colours themselves have formed the recognisable symbol of the product. I took inspiration from this convention of most music magazines. However, rather than use reds in my colour schemes, I simplified the scheme and formed a black and white house style and tried to replicate the recognisable factors of existing popular music magazines such as Q, Enemy and The Fly. The consistent use of black and white graphic devices throughout my magazine form the recognisable features of my magazine in comparison to the existing media texts. Question 2. How does your media product represent particular social groups? In my media product, I have chosen to include images of mainly white, middle-class, older teenagers. The reason for this is to represent the fact that musicians from an ethnic minority rarely write or perform folk music, As well as this, the area that I live in is a mainly white middle class area, and so finding local musicians to photograph and write about would mostly be white and middle class. I have tried to include a range of ages as much as possible. However, most of the people that were able to take part in the shoot for the cover images, contents page and double page article were of the 16 to 18 age range. This is not typically what you'd find in a mainstream music magazine. However, I included the teenage musicians to appeal to the target audience. I also wanted to give the genre of folk music a younger look, rather than associating folk music with the older crowd of musicians such as Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen. Although musicians such as Dylan are widely regarded as some of the best writers and performers in the world, the generation of folk music arriving at the moment has an entirely new feel to it. Here you can see some images of the younger folk generation and the style and look that they portray. Because this is a relatively new genre of music that has evolved over the last few years, there has yet to be a magazine released that focuses on this genre. I believe my magazine fills that gap in the market. Folk music also has connotations of music being written and performed by the poorer classes of society, and although the musicians used for articles and images are not working class, I have tried to replicate the look and style of a careless musician playing music for love of playing music rather than for profit or fame. I chose to dress the model for my double page spread in a messy and untucked shirt and blue jeans, the typical look and style of a folk musician yet to achieve stardom. Question 3. What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why? As part of the research for this media product, I have looked into many different media institutions and distributors. I have researched three distribution paths: Bauer Media and IPC, and I have also looked into the way that the Fly gets distributed. Bauer Media is a company that is based in Germany and distributes many types of media text, ranging from specific lifestyle magazines to radio stations and mainstream UK television channels such as 4Music and Box TV. The company also distributes music magazines such as Q, Kerrang and Mojo magazine. Mojo and Kerrang could be described as genre specific, as my own magazine is. Bauer would not want to distribute more than one competing magazine, therefore I would not choose to distribute my magazine through Bauer. IPC is a distribution company that operates out of the United Kingdom and has a wide portfolio of magazines, ranging from women's lifestyle such as Marie Claire to country magazines such as Horse and Hound and Country Life magazine. IPC also distribute men's lifestyle magazines such as Mousebreaker and Nuts, as well as NME and Uncut. Because IPC already distribute music magazines, I would be reluctant to distribute through them. However, my music magazine is more genre-specific magazine, focusing on folk music and the modern popularity of folk music in recent times, in both the UK and America. If I were to distribute my magazine conventionally through a large corporation, then IPC would be a good option. However, I have also been researching into the way in which the Fly operates their distribution channel. Starting as a concert listings leaflet operating in the Camden area of London, the Fly then began an evolution in 1999, transforming into a music magazine written with contributions from true music enthusiasts, writing about the very best of new music in the country. After HMV purchased a 50% stake in the Mama Group in 2009, the popularity of the Fly took off, and by the time HMV bought the whole of the Mama Group later the same year, the Fly became one of the most popular music magazines in the whole of the United Kingdom, offering a fresh look at the unsigned acts that were appearing in the country from the perspective of industry experts. The Fly offers all this for free due to the many connections to record labels, concert venues and the very best contributors to traditional music magazines, as well as advertising on the website and in print form in the magazine itself. The pathway that the Fly has taken has been unconventional but has paid off massively. I would ideally take this route of distribution for my magazine because of the smaller specific nature of the target audience, folk music fans. However, in order to successfully distribute in this way, you would need many contacts in terms of the venues, artists and contributors, so taking a more traditional method into the industry would be the more realistic and lucrative option. Therefore, my final decision would be to choose to distribute my music magazine through IPC Media. This decision is based on the fact that IPC currently do not have any genre-specific music magazines, so the company would be keen to have a slightly different type of music magazine as part of their portfolio. The contacts and potential to reach as many consumers as possible is also vast with this distribution company because of the many other types of magazines in their portfolio. There may be links between my music magazine and other lifestyle magazines in IPC's portfolio, enhancing the consumer reach potential. Question 4. Who would be the audience for your media product and why? My target audience for my music magazine is 18 to 21-year-olds, mainly males that are mostly established fans of folk music in general. They would probably be university students or earning money in the hospitality industry, such as bar work or working in restaurants. I have tried to tailor as many elements as possible to the male sector of my target audience. Firstly, I have included many simple colour schemes and tried to incorporate a slick-looking house style with blacks, whites and greys making up most of the graphic devices. A female audience may be more drawn to a more colourful front page or contents page, with a more flowing house style, such as In Style magazine. This front cover features Taylor Swift, a strong female public figure, and the house style applied to the front cover features the text, images and titles blending it into each other by the use of similar shades of golds, yellows and reds. My magazine has attempted the opposite by having a blocky look to it. The different features on the cover tend to stand alone rather than complement the others. The different titles, subtitles and images are very much separate from one another, appealing to a more male audience. Both male and female imagery can be used to attract male attention in a magazine. Female imagery can be used to attract men in an objective way, by having the images of women portrayed for their sex appeal, whereas men can also be attracted by images of talented or inspiring men. The two different techniques are rarely used in conjunction with each other, and can only be successful put in a more general context, such as the lads' mags genre of magazine, including Nuts and Zoo, seen here. These magazines feature both female and male imagery because the theme and topic of the magazine is far more generalised, featuring articles on very stereotypical male hobbies and interests such as football, glamour publication and crude jokes. Because my magazine has a much more focused topic, the ways in which I have attracted a male audience have to be far clearer and far more concentrated, which is why I have included images and articles focusing on why the musicians in question should be looked up to. For example, describing or showing how talented they are, or describing the recent success from tours, album sales, etc. Question 5. In which ways did you attract or address your audience? To answer this question, I thought I would discuss the magazine with a member of my target audience. I have filmed the discussion to hear the response of a target audience member firsthand. So I'm here with Ross from my focus group about the magazine. I'm just going to ask him a few questions about the magazine and what he liked, what he didn't like about it. So Ross, can you tell me a bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm 18 years old. I'm living in London at the moment, studying at uni. I'm in my first year doing an acting degree. In my spare time when I can, I work part-time in a bar. I'm just really enjoying it at the moment. Like, working at the bar is really cool on the weekend. I meet a lot of great people and I'm really enjoying the course. It's really beneficial.
Cool, and you would describe yourself as a folk music fan?
Oh yeah, definitely. I love folk music.
Nice, okay, cool. So just looking at the magazine, what elements can you say caught your eye initially?
Well, talking about the contents page, the Tequila Mockingbird, I've never heard of them. That really caught my eye because the sort of album art they've got, or the sort of picture they've got there looks really cool. It's really different. It's really indie, I must admit. No, well, kind of indie / folk, but no, they look really cool. I know Ryan Green, and that catches my eye, saying that we will let him into his dressing room. In terms of the front cover, I like the way it's laid out. There's a lot going on, but it's still quite clear with the big black fonts. But we've got like the ukulele theme and all the Jack Kerouac little tabs and things. really informational and let me know exactly what I can see in your magazine.
Nice, okay, thank you. So are there any design elements of the magazine that would make you want to read more?
I think I really like the way, as I said, I kind of like the whole black and white thing. It's quite minimalistic, but the way it's kind of spread out around the Ryan Green's face, it's very interesting actually. It's not really like something I've seen that much before. It's quite unique in the way that it's laid out. I think that definitely would make me want to read into it as a sort of initial.
Okay, so you like the way the sort of text is laid out?
Yes, like initially interesting. That's the first thing I see, obviously.
So is there anything about the double page spread that you can talk about that made you want to read more about Ryan Green?
Yeah, I like this little caption. It's quite nice because at the top, the growing up in Brixton bit just gives you, I don't know, it's kind of something you can familiarise with, because I'm living in London at the moment and I understand the different parts of London.
Yeah, there's a big folk crowd in London.
Yeah.
A lot of folk.
Yeah, I've been to a few little sort of underground folk clubs and things, and there's been some open mic nights and things where I first met Ryan Green, and no, it's just quite a nice little intro, and then obviously you've got the interview with him, which lets us hear exactly what he's saying, so that catches my eye.
Okay, cool. Anything you could talk about with the photos? Did you like the way they're laid out? Did you like the colour scheme?
I really like the colour scheme actually. I like how in the middle you've got the two of pretty much exactly the same picture, just edited in different ways but with slight changes. And I like the two, because the two middle ones are kind of more chilled. They're quite just folky and like carefree. But then you've got the two on the right, the one on the right and the one on the bottom left. They're obviously quite sort of artificially made, obviously just to make them sort of like look cool and stuff. But that's nice because it gives a different depth than being more serious than the one in the middle.
Cool, thank you. And what elements of the magazine did you feel addressed your age group specifically as a 18-year-old?
I think definitely on the front cover where it said about the Grammys or the Emmys, I can't really remember now, but about the awards, because that's something that I'm very interested in. Me and my friends, the British Grammys, and we watched that. We were talking about it for days after, so that initially catches my eye. And also ukulele has been something I've been interested in for a few years now. I've been playing the ukulele for about 2 years, and that's definitely something I would at least pick up the magazine in a shop and read a bit and then probably buy it, to be honest.
So does the age of the models and the musicians in the magazine, would that have a bearing on whether or not you buy it?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's Jack Harrop bloke. I said I don't know him, but he looks pretty cool. And I think the image of a band is something which is very important. Like just to keep Mockingbird, if I saw them, I don't even need to listen to their music, but I can guarantee from seeing
already.
Yeah, I can guarantee from looking at that, I'll check them out on YouTube later.
Cool. Okay, well thanks Ross. Cheers. Question 6. What have you learnt about technologies from the process of constructing this product? A major factor in the production of this product was my own inexperience of using Photoshop in order to create a professional looking media product. I had to be able to navigate and use Photoshop effectively and efficiently. Because I had never used Photoshop before, I had to learn how to use certain tools and manipulate images and text in a way to create effects that suited my magazine. Some elements of Photoshop that I used frequently was the ability to change the colours of images, such as colour correction, especially when creating the double page spread. I wanted to create an effect that attached emotions to the photos. By simply adding more red, blue or green to the colouring of the photo, I was able to give the images a bit more depth. The varying style of images called for variation in the colours and the size of images. For example, I added a subtle blue tone to the larger image on the right, in which the musician is looking serious. I took the image as pieces of plain white paper were thrown above and around the model. This was used as a visual metaphor for the writing process the musician goes through, as mentioned in the interview. Photoshop allowed me to crop and enhance the images to create a professional-looking lead image for the interview. Through creating this product, I also learned how lighting can create different effects in terms of still images. I held a photo shoot with all of my models and musicians to create a well-lit and clean images. This photo shoot was held in a room with white walls and a wooden floor. The different lighting effects allowed me to create shadowing and darkness, as well as highlighting on the faces, and in some cases, here you can see some examples of where lighting was used to create different effects and moods for the images. Question 7. Looking back at your preliminary task, the school magazine, what do you feel you have learned in the progression from it to full product? I mainly feel that my skills in Photoshop have improved massively. I had not used Photoshop previously to the preliminary task, so I feel that in particular my skills in tool selection and being more creative by using tools in Photoshop were dramatically improved. As you can see here, the lead image on the cover of my magazine has not been changed much since the photography. However, on the cover of my music magazine, as my main media task, there are elements that have changed dramatically, such as the colour changing. I have since learned how to use colour correction effectively, and I've also learned the importance of cropping and layering, as you can see here on the music magazine cover. A common feature of music magazines is to have the photograph overlapping the titles and other features on the cover, and I was able to replicate this effect through the trial and error of many tools in Photoshop. Since the preliminary task, I have also learned the importance of setting up a controlled photo shoot rather than relying on natural lighting for photography, etc. Whereas in the preliminary task I would not particularly worry about taking time over an image, I know now the importance of taking time to create a photograph that has been planned, framed and lit correctly. The preliminary task also taught me how to correctly manipulate images of faces, etc. As you can see in the lead photograph from my preliminary task, the model's face is slightly distorted. This was due to my inexperience of manipulating images of faces. I didn't keep the right aspect ratio, and so the image of the face was slightly out of proportion. The preliminary task also demonstrates how my understanding of colour on the cover of a magazine has changed. Whereas before I would allow a brick wall background to be put on the front page, for my main task I had a much clearer understanding of what colours work well together and what colours shouldn't be put on the same page. Overall, I feel my ability to navigate Photoshop effectively has improved to the point where I'd feel comfortable editing and manipulating images to suit any genre of media product. The preliminary task helped me gain an initial understanding of how the program worked, as well as allowing me to see the faults in the initial photographs.